Wanting it more is not making it come faster. Sit with that for a moment, not because it sounds comforting, but because if you trace the last year of your life honestly, you will find evidence of it everywhere. You have wanted things with everything you had. You have thought about them in the morning before you were fully awake. You have refreshed pages. You have rehearsed conversations. You have built plans and rebuilt them. And still, the thing you want most has kept a particular distance from you, as though it can sense exactly how much you need it. Here is what nobody names directly. That distance is not random. There is a mechanism at work, one that most people never identify because it is invisible from inside the experience of it. From inside, it just feels like bad luck or bad timing or evidence that you are somehow not enough. From outside, if you could see it clearly, it would look like a hand gripping something so tightly that the grip itself is the reason nothing moves. What you are about to hear will not ask you to want less. It will not tell you to stop caring. It will not ask you to pretend outcomes do not matter. It will do something more precise than that. It will show you the specific difference between the energy that repels what you want and the posture that draws it in. That difference is not what most people expect it to be. By the time this is finished, you will not hear the word need the same way again. Chapter 1. Wanting it more pushes it away. There is a pattern older than any name we have given it. Across every age, in every place where human beings have gathered and dreamed and reached, there has always been a particular kind of suffering that no one warned them about. Not the suffering of hardship, not the suffering of loss, but the suffering of wanting something so badly that the wanting itself became the wound. Whole generations have repeated this cycle without ever being told why they could not break it. The ones who finally got what they chased almost always said the same thing afterward. They said it came only when they stopped needing it to come. That phrase sounds like a riddle. It is not a riddle, and the answer to it is exactly where you are standing right now. You are in the middle of the chase, and something is starting to feel wrong about it. Picture it clearly. You wake up and the first thought is already work, already money, already the thing you have been trying to make happen for months, maybe years. You check your phone before your feet touch the floor. You run the numbers again even though you ran them last night. You have a plan and you have worked the plan and you have adjusted the plan. And still the gap between where you are and where you need to be sits there every morning, unchanged, patient, almost mocking. You are not lazy. That is the part nobody around you seems to understand. You want this more than almost anyone you know, and yet wanting it this much does not seem to be working. Here is the question that has been living in the back of your mind, the one you have not said out loud yet. If effort were the answer, why doesn't it feel like it's working? Hold that question. It matters more than you know right now. There is a word for what you are carrying. It is not ambition. Ambition is clean and directional. What you are carrying is something heavier. Call it the grip. The grip is the feeling of holding an outcome so tightly that your hands have stopped doing anything else. You are no longer pursuing a goal. You are guarding it, protecting it from the possibility that it might not arrive. And the strange, frustrating truth is that the grip does not pull things toward you. It pushes them out. Remember the version of you waking up each morning at that exact point 3 years earlier. Not the circumstances, not the job or the account balance or whatever situation you were in. Think about how you felt about money, about the future, about your own ability to build something real. Was there a version of you back then who was lighter, who still believed things would eventually click into place? What happened to that feeling? When did the believing turn into bracing? That shift, that exact moment when hope became strain, is where the grip tightened, and most people never notice it happened. Here is the story of a man named Daniel. Daniel was 29 years old and had been trying to build a freelance design business for 14 months. He had the skills. He had the portfolio. He sent 43 cold emails in a single month, followed up on 31 of them, revised his pricing twice, redesigned his website, and posted on every platform that made sense. Then he watched his bank account drop below $1,000 for the first time in his adult life. He started checking his email every 20 minutes. He refreshed his proposal tracker after sending each one. He could feel himself getting tighter with every potential client who went quiet, every red receipt with no reply. When he got on calls, clients could feel something coming off of him, a neediness, an urgency. The call would go fine on the surface but would end without a decision, then trail into silence. The harder he pressed, the emptier the pipeline grew. One morning he sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and could not make himself send a single email. He just sat there, and in that exhausted stillness, he did something he had not done in months. He opened a design file he had started for himself, a personal project with nothing to do with clients or income, just something he genuinely wanted to make. He worked on it for 3 hours without checking anything. That afternoon, 2 separate clients from weeks prior sent messages asking if he was still available. He had not followed up with either of them. He did not understand it then, but you will. That story is not magic. It is cause and effect. But the cause is not the one we are trained to look for. Every time Daniel sent a message from a place of desperation, the message carried something invisible but detectable. People sense need. They sense it the way you sense when someone at a party is scanning the room while talking to you, present but not present, watching the door, waiting for something better. That energy does not invite connection. It ends it. Daniel's clients were not responding to his words. They were responding to the frequency underneath his words. And that frequency said one thing: I need this more than you need me. That is a posture of weakness in every interaction that matters. And the posture repelled the very thing he was trying to attract. Desperation broadcasts lack, and lack is precisely what gets reflected back. This is not a soft idea. This is not a theory from someone who has never gone without. When your nervous system is locked in scarcity, every decision you make is filtered through fear. You discount your prices because you are afraid of losing the client. You over-explain in interviews because you are afraid of the silence that might mean no. You text first, apologize unnecessarily, compress your own needs to make room for someone else's comfort. The cost you are paying is your own credibility, every single time. And here is what almost no one tells you about the desperation loop. It is self-reinforcing. The more you chase, the more the outcome recedes. The more it recedes, the tighter you grip. The tighter you grip, the more desperate the energy you broadcast. The cycle feeds itself, month after month, in jobs and bank accounts and relationships and every place where you have decided the stakes are too high to be patient. You cannot force your way out of this loop by trying harder. That is the trap door, the one that looks like the exit, but leads to another level of the same room. So what is the exit? Not detachment, not giving up, not pretending you do not want what you want. The exit is something far more precise than any of those, and it begins with understanding the difference between a closed hand and an open one. A closed hand grips. A closed hand is defensive, braced, holding on. An open hand can still hold something, but it holds it differently. An open hand is also the posture that receives. You will encounter the open hand again in this book. There will come a moment where everything that looks like vulnerability in this early chapter reappears as the exact posture that produces results. That contradiction will resolve in a way that changes how you act every single day. That resolution is worth waiting for. For now, what matters is the diagnosis. Before anything can be rebuilt, the pattern has to be named. And the pattern is this: you have been treating want as fuel, when want carried past a certain point becomes friction. The car does not go faster because you grip the wheel harder. The outcome does not arrive faster because you need it more. Daniel eventually understood this, not through a single revelation, but through one afternoon of building something for no reason, for no client, for no deadline. He noticed what came back when the need went quiet. He did not stop caring about his business. He stopped letting his business decide whether he was okay. That small internal movement, almost invisible from the outside, changed the frequency of everything he sent into the world. You already know what this feels like in reverse. You know the call you made without caring much about the outcome, the one that went easily and ended in a yes. You know the day you forgot to check your email because you were genuinely interested in something else and came back to find something waiting. You have already experienced the principle. You have just not had a name for it. Here is the name: detached desire, wanting clearly and fully with no trembling edge of need attached to the want. That is what this book is teaching you to carry. The question is not whether you want enough. You want plenty. The question is what your wanting is doing to everything it touches. Chapter 2. The harder you clutch, the less you hold. What you are about to hear contradicts something most people believe so completely they have never once questioned it. Most people believe that the intensity of their desire is what makes things happen. They believe that wanting something badly enough, chasing it relentlessly enough, is the engine that closes the distance between where they are and where they want to be. Almost everyone you know believes this, and it is wrong, not partially wrong, not wrong in some philosophical way that does not affect daily life. Wrong in a way that is actively costing you, right now, today, the very things you are working hardest to get. The reason no one has said this clearly is that effort looks like virtue. Hustle looks like discipline. And the person lying awake at midnight calculating their next move looks from the outside like someone who deserves to win. But the math is backwards. By the time this chapter ends, you will feel exactly why. You already know the feeling the last chapter named. You want plenty. The question is what your wanting is doing to everything it touches. Here is the thing about want. Want in its natural state is clean. It is directional. You feel it the way you feel hunger. It tells you something. It points somewhere, and then it waits. But something happens to want when fear gets inside it. Something happens when the gap between where you are and where you need to be starts to feel dangerous. The want stops being a signal and becomes a grip. A grip is not the same as desire. A grip is desire that has lost trust in itself. Think about your hand for a moment. An open hand can hold water, can receive a coin, can catch something thrown toward it. A closed fist holds nothing new. Whatever was inside it before the fist closed, that is all it will ever contain. The posture of receiving requires openness. And openness requires exactly the one thing that fear makes almost impossible to practice. It requires you to release the outcome, even slightly, even for a moment, without knowing for certain that it will come back. Most people read that and feel something close to panic. Now meet Layla. Layla was 31, working a contract role at a mid-sized firm in Austin. She had interviewed 3 times at a company she had spent 6 months trying to get in front of. The process had gone well. She knew it had gone well. The hiring manager had said more than once that she was exactly what the team needed. Layla left the final interview feeling something rare, calm, clear, genuinely confident. She drove home without checking her phone. She cooked dinner. She slept 8 hours. For exactly 3 days she held that feeling. On day 4, the silence became unbearable. She sent a follow-up email. Polite, professional, nothing excessive. Fine. Day 7, she sent another one. Also reasonable, she told herself. On day 9, she found the hiring manager on a professional networking site and sent a brief message there too, just to make sure nothing had gotten lost. The next morning, she emailed the recruiter. Then she emailed the hiring manager again, this time with a short document outlining ideas she had for the team's current challenges. She had stayed up until 2 in the morning making that document. She was showing initiative. She was demonstrating commitment. She was proving she wanted this. The offer never came. The recruiter eventually told her the company had gone in a different direction. The hiring manager never replied to the last 2 messages. Here is what Layla could not see from inside that spiral. Every communication she sent after day 4 was not received as enthusiasm. It was received as pressure. And the moment a decision-maker feels pressured, something shifts in how they see you. You stop being the candidate they wanted and start being the problem they need to manage. Layla was not wrong to want the job. She was not wrong to follow up once. She was wrong in the assumption driving every action after that, the assumption that more effort would close the gap, that more contact would make her safer, that doing more would give her control over an outcome that was never fully in her hands to begin with. The job offer existed. It was real. It was moving toward her, and she stopped it, not because she wanted it, but because she needed it. Need converted her desire into demand. And the world, people, opportunities, outcomes does not respond well to demand. It flinches. It pulls back. It finds another direction. You have done a version of this. You may be doing a version of it right now. Think about a time in the last few years when you wanted something, a relationship, a deal, a role, a result, and the wanting curdled into something urgent and tight. Think about how you behaved in that state, the extra messages you sent, the times you refreshed your inbox, the conversations where you could not quite hide how much the answer mattered. Think about whether the grip helped at all, or whether the grip itself changed the shape of what you were reaching for. This is the open loop at the center of this chapter, and you need to hold it before the answer arrives. If need pushes away the thing you want most, and desire in its pure form pulls things toward you, then how do you want something without needing it? How do you stay motivated without becoming desperate? How do you care about the outcome without making it the only thing standing between you and safety? That question is not rhetorical. It has a precise answer. But you have to understand the full cost of the grip before the release will mean anything to you. Here is the cost. Attachment to a specific outcome does not just affect that outcome. It narrows your perception. When Layla was deep in the spiral of that job application, she stopped noticing 3 other leads she had going. She let a coffee meeting with a former colleague slide for 2 weeks. She passed on a short contract because taking it felt like giving up on the thing she really wanted. She was not just holding that one job offer too tightly. She was contracting around it. Her whole field of possibility was narrowing in real time, shaped by the grip. This is what the grip does. It does not just fail to bring you what you want. It actively reduces the number of paths available to you. A closed fist is unable to receive, and it is also unable to let go of what is already inside it, even if what is inside has stopped being useful. The desperation loop has a very particular feeling. It feels like strategy. It feels like you are thinking things through, covering your bases, staying on top of the situation. It has the texture of being responsible. But underneath all of that organized surface, there is one driver. The driver is fear. Fear that if you stop pushing, everything stops. Fear that the universe is not moving toward you on its own. Fear that effort is the only thing keeping you from falling completely behind. And if you rest your hands for even a moment, the distance will become impossible to close. That fear is a story. It is not a fact. The fact is that you have received good things in your life without white-knuckling them into existence. You have had doors open that you were not even standing in front of. You have had calls come through at the right moment, offers arrive from unexpected directions, connections form with people you were not chasing. Think carefully about how those moments actually happened. Think about what your internal state was in the days or weeks before they arrived. Was it desperation? Or was it something quieter, something more like focused ease, like you were moving forward without needing anything particular to happen by a particular day? Need converts desire into demand. That is the line. Read it again slowly with your ear, not your eye. Need converts desire into demand. And demand is a closed fist. It does not receive. It does not attract. It broadcasts a frequency that everything worth having tends to move away from. Not because the universe is punishing you for wanting, but because the people and opportunities that could actually change your life can feel pressure, and pressure makes them cautious. The answer to the question, how do you want without needing, exists. It is not vague. It is not a spiritual bypass or a trick of positive thinking. It is a posture. A practiced, deliberately maintained posture toward outcomes. And the name of that posture is something you have encountered once already in this book, briefly, like a shape glimpsed through fog. Later in this book you will encounter something that directly contradicts what most people believe about motivation. When that idea snaps into focus, it alters every single action you take toward what you want. For now, hold this. The open hand is not passive. It is not indifferent. It is not the hand of someone who does not care. It is the hand of someone who has decided, with full intention and full desire still intact, to remain a surface that can actually receive what is moving toward it. Layla lost a job she was right for. She lost it the moment her hand became a fist. Not the moment she stopped caring. The moment she stopped trusting that caring was enough. What are you gripping right now that was already moving toward you before you started holding on? Chapter 3. Detachment is not indifference, it is power. Releasing your grip on a goal does not slow it down. It speeds it up. That sounds like the sort of comforting lie people tell themselves when they have already given up. It is not. It is a precise description of how the mind functions when it is no longer running on fear, and how a person in that state makes the kind of decisions that actually produce the outcomes they said they wanted. The confusion between detachment and defeat has cost more people more money, more time, and more peace than almost any other single idea you could name. And the reason it keeps costing them is that desperation feels productive. It feels like caring. It feels like effort. So you keep choosing it, not because it works, but because stopping it feels like betrayal. The question we carried out of the last chapter is still here with us. What are you gripping right now that was already moving toward you before you started holding on? Sit with that. The chapter ahead is going to give you the full answer. And when you hear it, you will recognize something you have always sensed but never had clean language for. Here is the question that opens this chapter and will not be answered for a while yet. Why do some people seem to want things less urgently than you, move toward them more slowly than you, and arrive before you do? Hold that. Think about what detachment actually looks like from the outside, not the spiritual version, not the philosophical concept, just the observable behavior of someone who is genuinely unattached to a specific outcome. They make decisions without flinching. They consider bad news without catastrophizing. They change course without grieving the plan they just abandoned. They do not need a deal to close today because their sense of self is not riding on it. And here is what that produces in the real world. Cleaner thinking, better timing, the ability to say no to something mediocre because you are not so hungry that mediocre looks like salvation. Desperation does the opposite. Desperation narrows your vision to the single thing you are chasing, and that narrowness is not focus. It is blindness. You stop seeing the other doors. You stop hearing the signals telling you to wait or to adjust or to walk away entirely. You push harder precisely at the moment when stillness would serve you better. And the outcome you wanted keeps drifting further away, not because the universe is punishing you for caring, but because the decisions you make while desperate are structurally different from the decisions you make while clear. This is not about caring less. That is the misread, and it is the one worth correcting right now. You can want something completely. You can want it the way you want air. And you can hold it loosely at the same time. Those two postures are not opposites. They only feel like opposites because somewhere along the way, you were taught that love and grip mean the same thing. That intensity equals pressure. That the stronger your desire, the tighter you should hold. But consider a seed. You can want it to grow with everything you have. And the most effective thing you can do after planting it is to stop squeezing it and let the soil do what soil does. Grip is not care. Grip is fear wearing the costume of care. Now let me tell you about a man named Marcus Ellery. Marcus was not famous. He was not a celebrity investor or a household name. He was a 41-year-old former high school teacher from Tucson, Arizona, who in his late 30s decided to invest seriously in real estate. He had watched his colleagues in the finance industry. The ones who traded constantly, refreshed their portfolios obsessively, and made decisions the way most people make decisions when something feels urgent. They were always in motion, always repositioning, always reacting. Marcus watched them and noticed something that troubled him. They were exhausted all the time. And they were not outperforming people who moved more slowly. Marcus had developed, through years of teaching teenagers how to sit with discomfort, a specific skill. He knew how to hold a position without needing it to resolve immediately. When he found a property he believed in, he did his research thoroughly. He made his offer based on numbers, not emotion. Then he released it. He genuinely released it. He would say to himself, out loud, "This is either the right one or it is making room for the right one." Then he would stop watching it. He would stop refreshing listings. He would stop calculating scenarios. He would go teach his evening class or make dinner or read a novel that had nothing to do with money. His colleagues thought he was strange. A couple of them thought he was not serious enough. Over 6 years, Marcus built a portfolio that outperformed every anxious, constantly monitoring trader in his circle. Not because he was smarter, not because he had better information, because his decisions were clean. Because when a better opportunity appeared while he was waiting on a first one, he could see it. He was not so attached to any single outcome that he became blind to the landscape around it. The deals that closed were not the ones he gripped hardest. They were the ones he trusted completely and then released. There it is, not as a metaphor, as mechanics. Think about the last time you wanted something so badly that you checked for it constantly. You refreshed the email. You ran the same mental calculation 17 times. You made the same case to yourself over and over, as if repetition would make the outcome certain. And during all that checking and calculating and repeating, were you actually doing anything useful? Or were you burning energy that could have been doing something else, while the outcome remained exactly as uncertain as before you started? Here is your mirror moment. Look back at the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago. Not in general terms, specifically. What were you chasing then? What were you gripping with both hands, convinced that if you just held on tighter, just pushed a little harder, the result would finally materialize? And how much of what you were gripping then is not in your life today? Not because it failed, but because you eventually let it go and something better slipped in through the space you opened. You already know this. Some part of you already knows that the things you hold loosely tend to stay. The things you clutch tend to fracture. So why is it so hard to release? Because releasing feels like indifference. And you were taught that indifference is the enemy of achievement. You were taught that the people who succeed are the ones who never stop wanting, never stop pushing, never rest until the result is in hand. That myth is everywhere. It is in every motivational speech you have ever heard, every story of grinding through the night and making it happen by force of will alone. Those stories are not entirely false, but they are incomplete. They do not tell you about the decisions those same people made calmly, the passes they took on bad opportunities because they were not desperate enough to settle, the moments they stepped back when stepping forward would have cost them everything. Detachment is not arriving at the destination and not caring whether you got there. Detachment is moving toward the destination without needing any single step to be the final one. That is the distinction. Let it land. There is a daily practice worth building into your life. It does not require a meditation cushion or an hour of silence. It requires about 90 seconds. At the end of each day, name the thing you are most afraid of losing right now. Not out loud to anyone else, just to yourself. Name it clearly. Then say this: I want this completely. I am doing what I can do, and I release the outcome, not as performance, not as spiritual theater, as a genuine mechanical act of choosing not to carry what you cannot control into your sleep and into tomorrow's decisions. What this does, practically, is separate your action from your anxiety. You can still work. You can still show up. You can still give everything you have to the process. But the part of you that monitors and catastrophizes and grips, that part gets a daily instruction to stand down. Over time, your decision-making becomes cleaner. Your reading of situations becomes more accurate. You stop seeing what you need to see and start seeing what is actually there. The open hand appears again here, not as vulnerability, not as the soft, exposed posture you may have mistrusted in the early chapters of this book. The open hand is a posture of readiness. A closed fist cannot receive anything. It is already full of the thing it refused to release. The open hand is not empty. It is available, and available is exactly what you need to be for the thing that is moving toward you right now. Now, the question you have been holding since early in this chapter. Why do some people want things less urgently than you, move toward them more slowly than you, and arrive before you do? Here is the answer. They are not less motivated. They have simply decoupled their sense of self from the outcome. When you are not desperate, you can wait for the right moment without that waiting feeling like failure. When you are not desperate, you can say no to a bad deal without that no feeling like loss. When you are not desperate, you think in longer arcs, because you are not trapped in the immediate terror of what happens if this particular door does not open today. They arrive first because they are not running. They are moving with direction and patience. And patience at the right pace covers more ground than sprinting in the wrong one. Down the line in this book, you will hear a point about motivation that pushes directly against the usual belief. Once that lands, it starts changing how you act every single day. For now, take what Marcus Ellery understood and built an entire life around. You can want something completely and hold it loosely. These are not opposites. This is the most powerful pairing in the whole system. Desperation is not desire. Desperation is fear that has stolen desire's clothing. What would you do differently tomorrow if you already knew the outcome was on its way, and the only variable left was whether your grip slowed it down? Chapter 4. Divine timing has its own calendar. Something is slipping away from you right now, and it is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It simply leaves. Quietly, the way light fades before you notice the room has gone dark. Every hour you spend chasing a result that has not yet arrived carries a cost. Every morning you wake up and immediately check for the confirmation that is still not there. Every moment you refresh and reach and recalculate. The cost is not just energy. It is opportunity. The version of you that could be open to something better is too busy gripping something that will not come faster because of the grip. And here is the part most people never hear. The delay you are feeling right now is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that something is being assembled. The question this chapter asks is one you may not have seriously considered before. What if the timing you keep fighting is not your enemy? That question matters more than it sounds like it does. You will feel exactly why before this chapter ends. 3 years ago, Layla Chen was applying for a senior marketing role at a mid-size firm in Portland. She had done everything right. Her resume was sharp. The cover letter had taken 4 drafts over 2 evenings. She had researched the company the way some people research stocks, tracking their campaigns, studying their voice, noting the gaps she could fill. She went to the first interview and left feeling a warmth she rarely felt in professional rooms. They told her they would follow up within a week. 2 weeks passed. No word. She sent a polished follow-up note. Professional, warm, not needy. She was proud of how it read. Another week, nothing. She went back and rewrote her resume. She applied to 4 other positions. She refreshed her email every 40 minutes for 9 days. She told her sister she was sure she had already lost the Portland role. She started calling herself foolish for getting her hopes up. By the time the 5th week arrived, Layla had mentally buried the job. She had let herself grieve it, walk away from it, and had started putting genuine energy into one of the other applications. Then the email arrived. Not from the company she had given up on. From a larger company, one she had applied to almost as an afterthought, with a request to interview for a director-level role. A full grade above what she had been pursuing. She went. She was calm in a way she had not been in the Portland interview because she had stopped needing it to go perfectly. She got the offer 2 weeks later. The salary was 40% higher than the Portland job would have paid. Portland, it turned out, had hired internally. They just never told her. That is the part of the story that matters most. Layla had spent 5 weeks in a loop of checking and grieving and recalibrating. In that entire time, the thing that was actually meant for her was still being assembled. She could not have seen it from inside the loop. She could not have known. And the moment she genuinely released the grip on the first thing, her attention shifted. She became available to the better thing that was already in motion. You may want to call that coincidence. You are allowed to. But before you do, sit with the pattern for a moment. Layla's experience is not rare. It is, in fact, the story that most people tell you in the years after they got the thing they wanted. They almost never say they got it at the moment they pushed hardest. Return to the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago. Think about what you were desperate for at that time, what you were checking and chasing and losing sleep over. Now think about whether you actually got that specific thing, or whether what arrived was something different, something you could not have designed from inside the wanting. Something that fit the person you eventually became, not the person who was frantically refreshing their phone in the dark. That reflection is not an invitation to passivity. It is a recalibration. Here is the tension that lives at the center of this entire idea. You have been taught, in essentially every success-oriented conversation you have ever heard, that wanting harder produces more. That hunger is the engine, that the people who get what they want are the ones who want it with the most visible urgency. You have been sold a picture of achievement that is almost always depicted through motion, through effort, through force. And effort matters. Nobody is suggesting otherwise. But there is a specific kind of effort that cancels itself out. It is the effort that comes from fear of not having. It is the daily reaching that is actually a daily declaration of absence. Every time you check for the result you need, you are reminding yourself it is not here yet. Every refresh is a small ceremony of lack. And that ceremony, repeated dozens of times across a day, shapes something in you that becomes visible to other people, to situations, to rooms you walk into. Desperation has a texture, and people feel it before they can name it. This is not mystical. This is behavioral. When you are in the desperation loop, your decisions narrow. You take the first option because you are afraid nothing else will come. You negotiate badly because you cannot afford to lose the deal. You shrink in conversations that should show your actual scale because too much is riding on this particular moment. The grip does not just feel bad. The grip produces objectively worse outcomes. And the worst part is that it moves slowly enough that you rarely connect the mechanism to the result. A little later, you will run into an idea about desire and how it operates that breaks with the story most people inherited. When that becomes clear, it starts changing how you reach for anything. For now, hold this. Timing is not neutral. It is not simply a matter of when things happen to arrive. Timing is a system, and like every system, it has its own internal logic. What feels like delay from inside the experience of wanting is very often the completion of conditions you cannot see from where you are standing. A door does not open slowly because the hinges are broken. Sometimes it opens slowly because the room on the other side is still being prepared. The calendar that ego runs on and the calendar that real outcomes run on are not the same document. Your ego's calendar says it should have happened by now. It says a month is a long time, that 6 months is too long, that if something were really coming it would have confirmed itself already. Ego timing is impatient because ego survival depends on visible evidence. Ego cannot afford to wait because waiting feels like losing, and losing feels like disappearing. Universal timing does not care about that story. Universal timing is completing a sequence you submitted a request to, and it is doing so in the order that produces the most durable result. The job you wanted at 26 would have made you comfortable enough to stop growing. The relationship you wanted at 23 would have kept you small in ways you would not have recognized for years. The deal you almost closed at the beginning of this chapter of your life would have cost you the freedom you needed to accept the far better one that is now forming just outside your view. You cannot know this from inside the waiting. That is the difficulty of it. And that is exactly why the grip feels so necessary. You grip because you cannot see. You grip because the alternative, the open hand, feels like surrender. And everything you have been taught says surrender is failure. But the open hand is not surrender. Here is what the open hand actually is. It is the posture that allows something to land. A closed fist cannot receive anything. It can only hold what it already has or fight for what it wants. The receiver's posture starts here with this realization. Your grip on the desired outcome is not what keeps it coming. Your grip is what slows it down. This is not about giving up. Layla did not give up. She had done the work. She had applied. She had prepared. She had shown up fully and presented herself honestly. She had done every single thing within her authority to do. And then she had exhausted herself trying to do the thing that was not within her authority, which was to control when the answer came. The moment she stopped trying to control the timing was the moment her energy became available for the thing that actually had her name on it. Notice she did not manufacture that shift. She did not meditate her way into letting go. She let go because she got tired of holding on. And sometimes that is all it takes. Exhaustion arriving before wisdom does is still exhaustion doing its job. The open loop this chapter started with was a question. What if the timing you keep fighting is not your enemy? Here is the close. The timing you keep fighting is not punishing you. It is not indifferent to you. It is, in a way you are only beginning to understand, protecting you from the version of the outcome that would have arrived too soon. Before you had become someone who could hold it without losing it, you applied for the right thing. You did the work. You showed up. Now stop refreshing. The outcome that fits the person you actually are cannot be rushed into the hands of the person you were in the middle of needing it. Chapter 5. Your frequency is the application. Desperation is not a strategy. It feels like one. It feels like effort, like urgency, like proof that you care enough to make something happen. But desperation is a frequency. And that frequency broadcasts exactly what it contains. The belief that what you want is not already on its way to you. The harder you chase, the louder you announce your doubt. The universe, if we want to call it that, does not respond to your calendar or your hustle log. It reads the signal underneath all of it. Here is the question this chapter is going to hold open for a while. You will want to sit with it before you hear the answer. What if the version of you that works the hardest is not the version of you that receives the most? That is not an invitation to stop working. That is a precise observation about what doing looks like when it comes from fear versus what doing looks like when it comes from knowing. The difference is not visible from the outside, but it is everything on the inside. Picture the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago. Not the jobs or the numbers or the circumstances, the feeling. Were you moving towards something, or were you running from something? Your legs do the same motion either way. But your body knows the difference. Your choices knew the difference. The results knew the difference. That distinction is what this chapter is about. There is a man named Derek. He is 31 and he has been building his business for 4 years with a discipline that most people would genuinely admire. He is first to his desk every morning. He sends follow-up emails at 11 at night. He tracks his revenue in a color-coded spreadsheet, and he refreshes it so often the habit has become invisible to him. Derek is not lazy. Derek is terrified. He has been terrified since the day he launched. Every action he takes is actually a small argument he is making against his own fear. Each email says, "Please, not nothing." Each late night says, "I cannot afford to stop." He does not know he is transmitting this. He would tell you he is confident, driven, clear. But the people on the other end of those emails feel something, a faint pressure they cannot name, and they hesitate before responding. Now consider Layla. She started her practice 2 years after Derek started his business. She works fewer hours than he does, and she does not have a color-coded spreadsheet. What she has is a very clear sense of who she is when she sits down to do the work. She spent a long time, longer than felt comfortable, learning what it felt like to do her work from genuine interest rather than financial desperation. She still has financial goals. She checks her numbers, but she is not arguing with fear every morning. She is just doing the work she actually understands herself to be doing, and clients find her. Not because she is louder, because something about her communication has no static in it. This is not a story about working less. This is a story about what you are full of when you work. That is the difference between Derek and Layla, and it is not a personality difference. It is a frequency difference. One of them is gripping. The other one is open. You already know what the grip feels like. You have felt it. The way you refresh your inbox looking for a specific reply. The way you run a calculation in your head about how many things need to go right in the next 60 days. The way you smile in a meeting but your jaw is tighter than it should be. That grip is not discipline. That grip is fear wearing the costume of effort. And the thing about a tight grip is that it cannot receive anything. Open your hand right now and imagine holding something delicate. You cannot hold it with a closed fist. The posture of receiving requires a different hand entirely. What is the cost of the grip? The cost is not just emotional exhaustion, though that is real. The cost is signal interference. When every action you take carries the charge of desperation, you're reaching for the phone, you're writing of the proposal, you're showing up at the event. When all of it is threaded through with the feeling that you cannot afford for this to not work, you are not sending a message about your product or your service or your idea. You are sending a message about your internal state, and that message is the loudest thing in the room. Here is something specific. Picture 2 people pitching the same idea to the same investor in the same week. One of them needs this meeting to go well. One of them wants this meeting to go well. The person who needs it has their identity riding on the outcome. Their voice does something involuntary when they sense hesitation. Their sentences get faster. They over-explain. They add qualifications they did not intend to add. The person who wants it has a preference, not a lifeline. They can hear a question without hearing a threat. They pause before they answer. They can say, "I don't know, but here is how I would find out," and have it land as confidence instead of weakness. Same pitch, different frequency. One of these people gets the meeting after the meeting. The investor does not consciously know what they are responding to. They would probably say something about preparation or clarity or presence. But what they are really detecting is the emotional state underneath the words. Human beings are extraordinarily sensitive instruments for that kind of reading. You have done this yourself. You have walked into a room and felt whether the energy was easy or strained within 30 seconds. You were not imagining that. You were reading frequency. So what do you do with this? You do a frequency audit. Not a vision board, not a gratitude list. A plain, honest inventory of the emotional state you are in when you do the things you do each day. You sit down with the last week of your life and you ask, what was I full of when I made that call? What was underneath that message I sent? Was I working from surplus or was I working from shortage? This is not about judgment. This is diagnostic. You are not looking for reasons to feel bad about your past behavior. You are looking for data about what signal you have been transmitting. The frequency audit is not complicated, but it requires a quality of honesty that most people prefer to skip. Because when you sit still with it, you will find that a large portion of your activity in any given week is not neutral. It is charged. It is reaching. It has the quiet desperation threaded through it that Derek has threaded through his spreadsheet. Seeing that clearly is the first act of a different kind of work. What does a different frequency actually feel like? It does not feel like calm indifference. Some people mistake non-attachment for not caring, and that is a misreading that costs them enormously. Non-attachment is not a lack of desire. It is a relationship with desire that does not require the desire to be fulfilled right now in order for you to feel intact. You can want something with real intensity and still be settled in your bones about the timing. You can pursue something with real effort and still have a hand that is open, not gripped. Further on, you will run into an idea about patience that breaks with the story most people inherited. After that clicks, it starts changing how you act on your most important goals. But here, now, understand this. The frequency of a person who already trusts the outcome is categorically different from the frequency of a person who is terrified the outcome will not come. The world around you does not respond to your stated beliefs. It responds to your operating signal. Layla understood this early, not because someone told her, but because she paid attention. She noticed what happened inside her on the days when clients came easily versus the days when nothing moved. On the days when nothing moved, she traced it back and found the same thing every time. She had woken up in a posture of lack. She had started the day already in a deficit. Every action she took from that posture was a demand instead of an offering. The moment she recognized that, she stopped asking how to get more clients. She started asking how to begin the day from a different internal position. That question changed everything. Not because it was magic, because it was accurate. Here is the thing the previous chapter left you standing in front of. The outcome that fits the person you actually are cannot be rushed into the hands of the person you were in the middle of needing it. This chapter is the mechanism behind that truth. The urgency, the grip, the forward-leaning desperation, that is a frequency. And outcomes that belong to ease cannot be pulled in by a signal that broadcasts strain. You are not the sum of your actions this week. You are the quality of the state those actions came from. The open hand is not a passive posture. It is an informed one. It means you have done the inner work specific enough to trust what is coming. You have stopped using your energy to drag it forward by force. The grip delays things, not as punishment, not as cosmic irony, simply because a fist is not shaped for receiving. This week, before you send the next message, before you make the next call, before you refresh the thing you have already refreshed 4 times today, pause for 2 seconds. Locate what you are full of. That is the audit. That is the beginning. The universe reads your being, not your doing. Chapter 6. The receiver stands open, not empty. Something is draining from your life right now, and it has nothing to do with effort. You are working. You are trying. You may even be doing everything the advice columns and the productivity videos told you to do. And still, somehow, the thing you want most keeps arriving for other people. You watch them. You wonder what they know that you do not. Every month that passes without the result you are working toward is not just a missed month. It is the compounded distance between where you are and where you could be standing, not because you failed, because no one handed you the mechanism, the invisible part, the thing that sits underneath all the action and determines whether the action lands or dissolves. This chapter is about that mechanism. By the time it ends, you will understand why the posture you bring to your life matters more than the pace. The universe reads your being, not your doing. A question came forward in the last chapter, and it is still in the room. Sit with that sentence for one more breath before this one begins. Because what follows is the practical answer to a question that sentence opens. If being is what gets read, then how do you position your being to receive? Open loops have a way of quietly commanding your attention. Here is one to carry through this chapter. There is a specific three-part posture that separates the people who receive what they want from the people who chase it forever. Most people are missing only one of the three, just one. You will know by the end of this chapter which one it is for you. Hold that question. First, though, you need to understand what the wrong posture looks like, because you have almost certainly been inside it, and it felt like virtue while it was happening. Picture a hand gripping something tightly, not in anger, in hope. The grip is gentle but total, fingers closed around an idea of how life is supposed to arrive, an idea of what the answer should look like, an idea of when it should come. The grip feels like caring. It feels like intention. It feels, honestly, like the responsible thing to do when you want something badly enough to count on it. But a closed hand cannot receive anything new. That is not a metaphor about releasing your dreams. That is a physical description of a closed hand. The desperation loop does not look like panic from the inside. It looks like diligence. It looks like research at midnight and revised plans by morning. It looks like wanting the right things for the right reasons and still wondering why nothing is arriving. And the reason, the one that almost no one names, is this. The posture of the chase communicates scarcity to every system you are operating inside, to your own nervous system, to the people you meet, to the decisions you make when the pressure of wanting is sitting on your chest. Scarcity posture produces scarcity results, not because the universe is punishing you, because a person who believes they are behind is not the same person as a person who believes they are ready. And the decisions those two people make, even from the same set of facts, are entirely different decisions. Revisit the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago, not to measure how far you have come, and not to feel the weight of how much time has passed. Just think about what you believed was possible then. Think about what you were gripping. Think about the thing you were absolutely certain had to happen in a very specific form or not at all. And ask yourself honestly, did it arrive in the form you demanded? Or did the thing you actually needed arrive through a door you had not thought to leave open? That is the mirror. You do not need to answer it out loud. Just let it stay. Now here is a woman named Cora. Cora ran a small alterations and tailoring shop in a mid-sized city for 11 years. She was exceptional at her craft, genuinely gifted, and she spent most of those 11 years applying for retail leases in what she called the right buildings, the ones near the good shops, the ones with foot traffic and visibility. She was rejected or priced out of every one of them. Each rejection felt like a door slamming. She had a very specific picture of what success looked like, and it was located in a particular kind of building on a particular kind of street. One autumn, her landlord raised her rent, and she had to make a fast decision. The only affordable space she found in time was above a dry cleaner on a quieter block, with no storefront visibility and a door she described as invisible. She was devastated. She took the space because she had no other choice. She put a single small sign in the window. Within 4 months, the dry cleaner downstairs had begun referring every alteration request they received directly up her stairs. The foot traffic was quieter but warmer. The clients were already primed to pay for garment care. Her revenue in year 12 outpaced all 11 years before it combined. The door she had ignored for a decade was the right door. She could not see it because she was looking somewhere else. Cora did not change her desire. She changed, without quite meaning to, her grip on the form of its arrival. There is that phrase again, the grip and the release. It appears in this book for a reason. It is not asking you to want less. It is asking you to hold what you want differently. So what is the posture that actually works? Here is the mechanical core of it. 3 parts, not sequential, simultaneous. This is not a morning routine you complete in order. This is a way of standing inside your life at the same time you are moving through it. The first part is presence. Full contact with where you are right now, not where you intend to be. This sounds like surrender, and it is not. Presence is not resignation. Presence is data collection. When you are fully in the room you are actually in, you notice things. You hear what is being said under what is being said. You see the door above the dry cleaner. You catch the referral before it passes you. Absence, the kind that comes from living inside a future you are desperate to reach, makes you functionally blind to the present moment. And the present moment is the only place where anything real can be handed to you. Presence does not mean you stop planning. It means your planning is fed by what is actually here, not only by what you wish were here. The second part is openness to form. This is the hardest one for people who have built a clear and detailed picture of what success must look like. The picture is not the enemy. Clarity of desire is powerful, but the attachment to a single route, to one shape, to one timeline, that is the closed hand. Openness to form means you hold the destination with full conviction and hold the path with full flexibility. You know what you want. You do not dictate the architecture of its arrival. In practical terms, this looks like a person who wants financial independence and applies the same seriousness to an unexpected partnership as to the plan they drafted originally. It looks like a person who wants meaningful work and considers the odd invitation even when it does not match the title they imagined. It is not randomness. It is intelligent openness. The destination stays fixed. The tunnel to it stays wide. The third part, and this is the one most people are missing, is action without agenda. Motion that is not driven by desperation. This is the paradox that most productivity advice refuses to acknowledge. You must act, and your action must not be contaminated by the pressure of needing a specific outcome from that specific action. When you act from desperation, the action carries a charge. Other people feel it. Decisions made in that charge often overreach, overcommit, or close options that were still opening. But when you act from a grounded state, doing the next right thing because it is the next right thing, not because you need it to save you, the action is clean. It costs less energy. It reads differently to the people receiving it. And it leaves your hands open after it is done, ready for whatever comes back. Action without agenda is not passive. It is disciplined. It requires you to do the work fully and then release the result. Fully. Not pretend release where you check 3 times a day. Release. Now close the loop that was opened near the beginning of this chapter. One of the 3 parts of this posture, presence, openness to form, action without agenda, is the one you are missing. You know which one it is. It surfaced while you were listening. Maybe it was the mirror moment 3 years ago that pointed at it. Maybe it was Cora's story and the door you have been walking past. Or maybe it was the phrase action without agenda, and you felt a small internal resistance when you heard it, the kind that signals recognition. That resistance is not a problem. That resistance is the exact location of the work. The receiver does not stand still. The receiver is not passive or idle or detached from life's ordinary demands. The receiver stands open and present and moving, fully engaged with what is here, fully flexible about what comes next, and fully unattached to the verdict of any single action. That is the posture. It is specific enough to practice and deep enough to spend years refining. Soon, you will run into an idea about timing that breaks with the story most people inherited. Once you grasp that turn, it starts changing how you decide when to move and when to wait. But for now, this is enough to hold. The open hand is not the vulnerable hand. It is the capable one. Chapter 7. Stop signaling need, start signaling wholeness. The most powerful thing you can do right now is stop trying so hard to get what you want. That sounds like advice from someone who has already given up. It is not. It is an observation about what your wanting looks like from the outside, and more critically, what it does to you on the inside, when it carries the weight of desperation instead of the lightness of certainty. Every signal you send into the world carries a frequency beneath the words. Through how you speak, how you position yourself, how you present an opportunity or ask for a response. That frequency is either wholeness or lack. People do not consciously detect it, but they feel it. And what they feel determines what they do next. This chapter is about learning to send a different signal, not by pretending, not by performing confidence you have not earned, but by understanding why wholeness is not a destination you reach after you get what you want. It is the condition you create before anything arrives. Here is the open loop. There is a question hiding inside everything you have read so far in this book. It goes like this. If you are supposed to want things and you are supposed to feel whole without them, how do you hold both at once without one canceling the other? Hold that question. The answer is coming. And when it arrives, it will not feel like a philosophical compromise. It will feel like something clicks into place. The previous chapter ended with this. The open hand is not the vulnerable hand. It is the capable one. So now you have to ask yourself what fills a capable hand, not desperation, not the white-knuckle grip of someone who believes this is their last chance. A capable hand is relaxed enough to receive and strong enough to hold. The posture matters, the inner posture specifically. And right now, most people are walking around with their inner hands clenched so tight around what they need that nothing new can enter. Think about sleep. You already know this from your own body. The nights you need sleep most, the night before something important, the night when exhaustion has been building for a week, those are often the worst nights. You lie there and you cannot get there. You try to force it. You count. You breathe in a particular pattern. You check the time and calculate how many hours remain if you fall asleep right now. The more you track it, the further sleep retreats. Sleep does not respond to effort. Sleep responds to conditions. You create the right conditions, darkness, quiet, warmth, the absence of urgency, and sleep comes to you. It always comes when you stop chasing it. What you want most in your life operates by the same principle. The desperation loop does not feel like desperation from the inside. That is what makes it so effective at keeping you stuck. From the inside, it feels like drive. It feels like hustle. It feels like refusing to settle and pushing through resistance. But there is a specific feeling that lives at the center of it. If you go quiet enough right now, you can probably locate it. It is a low-grade anxiety that hums beneath every action. It is the feeling that things are not yet okay, that you are behind. That time is moving and you are not keeping up. That other people have figured something out you have not. That feeling is not drive. That feeling is signal. And everyone in the room with you can feel it, even when you smile. Call up the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago. Think about what you were chasing then. Think about how urgent it felt, how it occupied the center of your thoughts, how you measured days by how much progress you made toward it, how certain you were that getting it would make everything feel different. Now ask yourself, did you get it? And if you did it actually make everything feel different? Or did the feeling just move to the next thing, the next target, the next version of almost enough? This is the mirror, not to discourage you, but to show you something important. The need did not disappear when the thing arrived. The need was never about the thing. A woman named Clara ran a small consulting business for 6 years. She was good at her work. She had genuine results to point to. But every meeting with a potential client had the same invisible undertone. She could not quite name it until a client named it for her. He said, "I can tell you need this contract." He did not say it cruelly. He said it the way someone says a true thing they were not sure they were supposed to say. Clara was devastated, and then she went home and sat with it for 3 days. What she realized was that she had been entering every conversation already in debt. She had already mentally spent the money before the meeting started. She had already mapped out how this contract would fix the particular pressure she was under that month. So by the time she sat across from anyone, she was not presenting a service. She was communicating a need. Nobody wants to be the solution to someone else's desperation. Not a client, not a partner, not a door you are trying to open. Clara did something that felt almost reckless. She cleared her calendar for 2 weeks and stopped pitching. She spent those weeks doing the work she had been putting off, the thinking, the refinement, the building of something she believed in without waiting for someone to pay her for it first. And when she came back to those conversations, something had shifted. Not her offer, not her pricing, not her portfolio, something in her bearing. She had stopped arriving empty. She arrived already full. The next 3 clients signed without negotiation. There is a principle underneath that story. It is not about fake confidence or manufactured swagger. It is something more precise. When you genuinely do not need the specific outcome from a specific conversation, your attention goes to the quality of the exchange rather than the result of it. You listen better. You respond to what is actually being said instead of what you need to hear. You ask the question that serves the other person instead of the one that serves your pitch. That quality of presence is what closes rooms. That is what makes someone feel seen. That is what makes them lean forward. The signal you send is not about what you say. It is about where you are standing when you say it. Here is what wholeness actually looks like in practice. It is not pretending you do not want things. It is not manufacturing serenity you do not feel. Wholeness is a position you take internally. It sounds like this: I would welcome this outcome and I am fine without it. Both of those things at once, not as a performance. As an actual state you practice until it becomes true. You practice it in small moments first. You practice it in conversations where the stakes are low. You practice it when you order something and it does not come the way you wanted it. You practice the return to center, the return to fine. The return to here is already enough to work with. People who feel whole do not constantly broadcast what they are missing. They talk about what they are building. They talk about what already works. They reference a future that sounds inevitable rather than a future that sounds desperate. And the people around them begin to believe it too. That belief is contagious. And contagious belief is how opportunities find people who seem to already have enough. You cannot fake this in the long run. But you can build toward it. The building starts with one honest question you ask yourself before any important conversation. any pitch, any request, any reach towards something you want. That question is, am I entering this from need or from wholeness? Not to judge yourself, just to know where you are standing, because if you are entering from need, you have some work to do first. Maybe that is 5 minutes of quiet. Maybe it is reminding yourself of 3 things that are already working in your life. Maybe it is reconnecting to the version of yourself who existed before this particular want felt so urgent. Whatever it takes to set the need down for a moment and stand up straight. Later on, you will run into an idea about desire that breaks with the story most people inherited. Specifically about whether wanting something strongly works in your favor or against you. When that point settles, it starts changing how you act in the moments that matter most. But right now, this chapter has one more thing to deliver. The open loop you have been holding. How do you want something and feel whole without it at the same time, without one erasing the other? The answer is not balance. It is sequence. Wholeness comes first. Always first. You establish it before the wanting enters the room. You build it deliberately, the way you build the conditions for sleep. Darkness, quiet, warmth, the absence of urgency. You create a self that is not contingent on an outcome. And from inside that self, you want freely, fully, without shame. Because now the wanting is clean. It is not contaminated by desperation. It is desire without grip. It is preference without panic. It is the reach of someone who knows they will be fine either way, and who still extends the hand because the thing they want is genuinely worth reaching for. Feeling complete now is not a lie you tell yourself while you wait. It is the only ground firm enough to receive from. What does someone who already has what you want do differently each morning? And is that the thing you have been waiting to give yourself permission to do? Chapter 8. Release is the most aggressive move you can make. Something is leaving your life right now, and it is not making a sound. Not a door closing, not a clock ticking, just a quiet daily departure, the kind you only notice when enough of it is gone. The opportunity is not waiting for you to be ready. The right connection, the right room, the right moment, these things move through time the way a current moves through water. If your hands are full of the wrong thing, you cannot catch what is passing. That is the loss, not the dramatic kind, not the kind you can point to. The kind that compounds in silence, month after month, because the grip you are holding is costing you the very thing you are reaching for. Here is the question this chapter is built around. Most people never think to ask it. What if the thing standing between you and what you want is not effort and not time and not luck, but the grip itself? That question will not leave you by the end of this chapter, and the answer, when it arrives, will ask something of you that hustle never did. The previous chapter left you with a question about permission, about what people who already have what you want do differently each morning. The answer most people expect is that they work harder, or smarter, or earlier, but watch closely enough and you will see something else entirely. The people who have arrived, not the ones performing arrival, but the ones who are actually there, they move differently. They do not chase their own goals. They do not grip the outcome like it might escape. They have developed a relationship with what they want that looks, from the outside, almost like indifference. That appearance is what this chapter is going to dismantle, because what looks like indifference from the outside is one of the most disciplined inner postures a person can hold. Consider 2 people. Both want the same thing, a significant financial outcome, the kind that changes what you can offer your family and what you can do with your days. Call the first one Derek, call the second one Layla. Derek wakes up at 5 in the morning. He has a spreadsheet that tracks every lead, every email, every follow-up. He refreshes his inbox the way some people check a wound compulsively, half hoping, half dreading. When a deal gets close, his whole body tightens. He dreams about the numbers. He cancels plans to stay ready. He says yes to every opportunity because he is afraid that the one he declines will be the one that mattered. Derek is not lazy. Derek is not lacking in desire. Derek is, by every conventional measure, doing everything right, and Derek gets the deal. After 14 months of white-knuckle effort, the deal closes. On the day it does, Derek sits in his car in the parking garage of his office and realizes he cannot feel anything. He calls the person he wanted to share this with, and they are polite but distant, because 14 months of canceled plans made them distant. He got what he ran toward. He just arrived alone. And already, before the day is over, he is scanning the horizon for the next target. The grip does not know how to let go. The grip is all Derek has left. Now let one beat pass before you meet Layla. Layla wanted the same outcome. She thought about it clearly, specifically, without apology. She knew what she wanted and she knew why she wanted it. But somewhere in the middle of her pursuit, she made a decision that looked, to everyone around her, like giving up. She stopped tracking every variable. She stopped refreshing. She put real effort into her work, genuine, focused, skilled effort, and then she released the result. Not because she stopped caring, because she understood something Derek had not yet learned. The grip was closing the very door she was trying to open. Layla built a life that did not depend on the outcome arriving on her schedule. She kept her plans. She stayed present to the people around her. She remained in her own posture, someone who already had enough. And the outcome arrived, not dramatically, not cinematically. It arrived the way most real things arrive, quietly and without warning, into hands that were open enough to receive it. The difference between Derek and Layla is not talent. It is not timing. It is the grip. Here is what the desperation loop actually does to you. This is the mechanism most people never see. When you grip an outcome, you signal to every part of your behavior that the outcome is not yet yours, that you are in deficit, that you are chasing. And behavior shaped by deficit produces deficit-shaped results. You make decisions from fear instead of clarity. You take meetings you should not take. You say yes when yes is not the right answer. You compress your own worth because you need this particular deal to work, and the person across the table can feel that need. Need is not a negotiating position. Need is a posture, and posture is visible. What release does? Real release, not performed calm, not spiritual bypassing, not pretending you do not want what you want. What real release does is change the posture. It signals at every level that you are someone who operates from sufficiency. And sufficiency attracts what desperation repels. Bring to mind the life you were living in that chapter from 3 years ago. Not in a vague way, specifically. What were you gripping then? What outcome were you holding so tightly that it defined your mood on any given morning? Are you still holding it? Did it arrive? And if it did it feel the way you thought it would? Or did a version of it arrive that you almost missed because you were already looking past it for the next thing? This is the mirror moment of this chapter. It is worth sitting inside. Not because the past is useful as a place to live, but because the pattern you can see in 3 years of history is almost certainly the pattern you are living right now. The grip has a signature. It feels like drive. It feels like discipline. But it exhausts everything around it, including you. Here is what release actually requires. This is where the chapter earns its title. Release is not passive. This is the misunderstanding that keeps people trapped in the grip. They hear surrender and they think weakness and they go back to pushing harder. But release, the real kind, requires more internal precision than effort does. Effort is mechanical. You can execute effort while completely checked out of your own thinking. You can send 100 emails on autopilot. You can show up to every meeting and still be operating from pure pattern and panic. Effort does not require you to examine anything. It just requires you to move. Release, by contrast, requires you to hold two things at once: genuine desire and genuine peace about the outcome. That is not a contradiction. That is the most sophisticated emotional position a person can occupy. Wanting something completely, caring about it deeply, working toward it with real skill, and simultaneously not making your own worth, your own stability, your own present moment peace conditional on its arrival. That is not easy. That is, in fact, harder than anything the desperation loop will ever ask of you. Every chapter of this book has been building toward something. Every reference to the open hand, every mention of the receiver's posture, this is where it resolves. The open hand is not a metaphor for passivity. It is a metaphor for readiness. A closed fist cannot receive anything new. It is too occupied holding what it already has. The open hand is vulnerable, yes. It was introduced early in this book as vulnerability, and that framing was deliberate. Because the most common reason people stay in the grip is fear. Fear that if they let go, nothing will replace what they are holding. Fear that release equals resignation. But what the open hand actually represents is trust. Not blind trust. Not naive trust. The kind of trust that comes from understanding the mechanism. Things that are chased retreat. Things that are received arrive. The posture that receives everything is the posture of someone who is already complete. As this book keeps moving, you will run into an idea about readiness, about what it actually means to be prepared for what you want that breaks with the story most people inherited. After that really registers, it starts changing what you do before anything good arrives. But right now, here is what you can do. Identify the one thing you are gripping hardest. Not everything, just the one thing. The one outcome whose absence makes you feel behind. The one whose arrival you are measuring your worth against. Then make one decision. Do the work on it with full skill, full attention, full investment, and release the result to a timeline that is not yours to control. Not forever. Not without care. Just for today. Because release is not a permanent surrender. It is a daily practice. And it requires more courage than any early morning, any cold call, any spreadsheet ever will. Derek got what he chased, and it was empty. Layla received what she released, and it was real. The most aggressive move you can make is the one that looks, to everyone watching, like you have stopped trying, when in fact you have finally started trusting. Chapter 9. You became someone things come toward. Every culture that has organized itself around the idea of a good life has produced, somewhere in its wisdom, a figure who confounds the people around them. Not a conqueror, not a genius in the obvious sense, but someone who seems to receive what others exhaust themselves pursuing, and receives it without the frantic reaching that everyone else assumes is required. This figure appears in ancient parables, in the folktales of peoples separated by oceans, in the quiet observations of teachers who lived long before any of this was written down. The detail that never changes across any version of the story is this: the figure is not passive. They are not lucky. They simply became someone that good things move toward. That is not a mystical claim. It is a description of an internal state you are closer to right now than you have ever been. This chapter is about what happens the moment you complete that becoming. You heard it at the end of the last chapter. The most aggressive move you can make is the one that looks, to everyone watching, like you have stopped trying. That line probably landed in a part of you that recognized it without fully understanding it yet. Hold that. Because here is the open question this chapter will answer. What exactly did you become and when did it happen? Think about the grip. You know this feeling. That specific tightness in the chest when you want something badly enough that the wanting itself starts to feel like work. You check the account. You refresh the message thread. You rehearse the conversation you haven't had yet. You calculate the same numbers a fourth time hoping the total changes. The grip is not effort. Effort is clean and directed. The grip is effort that has curdled into fear. Here is the cost no one names clearly enough. When you are gripping, you signal to every room you enter and every person you meet that you are operating from scarcity. People feel it. Situations respond to it. The very thing you are reaching for senses the desperation and behaves accordingly. That has been the villain of this entire book. Not the economy, not the people who got there before you. The desperation loop itself, the belief that wanting harder is what closes the distance between where you are and where you want to be. But something changed. Something changed in you. Cast your mind back 3 years in your mind and keep it plain before you had the vocabulary for any of this. Think about the decisions you made from that gripping place. The opportunity you rushed toward and watched collapse under the pressure of your own need. The relationship, personal or professional, that you held too tightly and felt slip through your fingers anyway. The version of yourself that measured every morning by what had not yet arrived. You were not wrong to want those things. The wanting was never the problem. The problem was the posture. The posture. There is a moment in the story of a woman named Celeste that I want you to sit with. Celeste spent 4 years building a small business in her spare room, a consulting practice that never quite reached the income she needed it to reach. Not because her work was poor. Her clients renewed. Her referrals were steady, but she had a ceiling she could not break through, and for a long time she blamed her pricing, her niche, her location. Then a coach she trusted said something that felt insulting at first. The coach said, "Every new client can smell how much you need them." Celeste almost left. She stayed. She spent 3 months doing the hardest kind of internal work, not on her systems or her offers, but on the energy she brought to every sales conversation. She stopped treating prospects like rescuers. She started treating them like people she might or might not be able to genuinely serve. In the first month after that shift, she signed more new clients than in any previous quarter. Not because she had changed her pitch, because she had changed what she was. That is not a metaphor. That is mechanics. The open hand. You first encountered this idea early in this book, and at the time it was offered as something close to a wound, the vulnerability of releasing the thing you most wanted to control. It felt like risk. It looked from the outside like surrender. But here, at the edge of everything this book has been building toward, you can finally see what the open hand actually is. It is not weakness. It is the only posture that can receive anything. A closed fist holds what it already has. An open hand holds what it already has and remains capable of receiving more. The grip does not protect you. The grip announces your fear and repels the exact things your fear is afraid of losing. You have been practicing the open hand, maybe without naming it that way. Every time you made a decision from clarity instead of panic. Every time you let a deadline pass without catastrophizing. Every time you looked at your situation honestly and chose to act from your best self instead of your most frightened one. You were not waiting. You were becoming. And becoming is the only preparation that matters. Here is the revelation, and it is simpler than you have been trained to expect. When you stop needing it, you become the version of yourself that was always meant to have it. Not because the universe rewards detachment as a spiritual performance, but because the version of you that does not need it is calmer, clearer, more precise in action, more trustworthy in the eyes of every person who can help you, and more capable of recognizing the right opportunity when it arrives. Desperation distorts how you see everything. That was never the fuel. The need was the fog. And now the fog has cleared. This is what it means to be someone things come toward. It does not mean you have stopped wanting. Your desires are just as specific, just as vivid, just as real as they were before. But desire without desperation is a different instrument entirely. It is focused. It is patient in the way that a skilled person is patient, not idle, not passive, but deeply unbothered by the timeline because they are certain of the direction. You have crossed something in this chapter. The question you have been carrying, what exactly did you become, and when did it happen, has its answer now. You became someone who stopped measuring their worth by the arrival of the thing. The becoming happened slowly, then all at once, the way every real change does. It happened in the quiet decisions that looked like nothing from the outside. It happened every time you chose the open hand over the closed fist. Every time you trusted the direction without demanding a confirmed arrival date. Other people will look at what starts coming toward you and call it luck. Let them. You know what it actually is. It is the inevitable result of a person who finally stopped obstructing their own life. The final question before this book closes is not about what you need to do next. You already know what you need to do. The question is whether you will let yourself be the person who receives it, or whether, standing at the very edge of everything, you will reach for the grip one last time. Chapter 10. It was always coming, you arrived first. You have been ready for longer than you know, not almost ready, not nearly there. Ready fully in a way that the noise of chasing drowned out completely. Here is what makes that hard to sit with. The readiness was never the thing that was missing. You were not one insight away. You were not one more book away, one more strategy, one more sign. Something else kept you circling, something quieter than failure and more stubborn than fear. You have felt it. The way your hands close around a thing the moment it gets close. The way wanting becomes gripping before you even notice the shift. The question this whole book has been holding for you quietly, from the very first page, is whether you can feel the difference between the two, between wanting and gripping, between receiving and seizing. You are about to find out which one you have actually been practicing. That question will not stay abstract for long. Stay with it. There is a woman named Clara. She wanted one thing for 3 years. A specific kind of life, quieter, with more room in it. A small business selling handmade ceramics from a studio she had sketched in the margins of notebooks since she was 22. She had the talent. Everyone who touched her work said so. She had a plan. She revised it constantly. That felt like progress, but it was actually a form of control dressed in productive clothing. Every revision was a negotiation with fate. Every update to the business plan was another way of saying, if I just account for every variable, nothing can go wrong. She launched 3 times. She stopped herself 3 times. Each time she stopped, she said she needed to be more ready. The 4th time, Clara did not revise the plan. She opened the studio on a Tuesday in October with 12 pieces and a handwritten sign. The sign was slightly crooked. She did not fix it. 3 people came in that first day. One of them bought nothing but left a note that said the work made her feel less alone. Clara cried in the back room for 10 minutes. Then she opened the next day. That crooked sign is still there. What Clara did not understand until much later was that the studio had been available to her all 3 years. The space existed. The customers existed. The woman who left the note had walked past that block every single day for 2 years, but Clara had not been available to the studio. She was too busy making herself ready in ways that kept readiness permanently one step ahead. The version of you that has been chasing, really sit with that version for a moment. Picture who that person is, how they wake up, what they check first in the morning, the particular flavor of anxiety that follows them through the afternoon like a second shadow. Think about what that person is holding, what they will not put down even when their hands ache. That version of you has worked hard, genuinely, honestly hard, and hard work is not the problem. The direction of that work is the problem. Effort pointed inward at controlling outcomes does not compound the way effort pointed outward at genuine contribution does. You already know the difference. Your body knows it. There is a kind of effort that feels like pushing a wall that does not move, and a kind of effort that feels like walking a road that is already going where you need to go. The desperation loop, that is what this whole book has been quietly naming. The belief underneath the belief. Not just that wanting something is good, but that wanting it harder, louder, with more force and more frequency is what produces it. The terrible thing about that loop is that it works, sometimes, just enough to make you think the loop itself is the mechanism. You gripped and something arrived. So you gripped again. Then wondered why your hands were always full but never of the right thing. Here is what divine timing actually means. Not that good things arrive when you are patient enough. Not that the universe rewards the passive. It means that everything you are meant to hold becomes holdable only once your hands are open. That is not poetry. That is mechanics. A closed hand cannot receive. The receiver's posture, open hands, weight settled, attention pointed forward rather than upward at something you are trying to pull down, that posture is not surrender. It is precision. It is the most sophisticated thing you can do with desire. And here is the open loop this chapter has been carrying since the first line. You have been ready for longer than you know. That is not encouragement. That is a specific claim with a specific implication. If you were already ready, then the gap was never between you and the thing you wanted. The gap was between you and your willingness to stop performing the wanting, to stop demonstrating your need in ways that kept the need alive. Every time you rehearsed the lack, counted what was missing, measured how far, compared yourself against a timeline that someone else invented, you renewed the contract with absence. You signed it again, not because you were weak, because you believed deeply that monitoring the distance was the same as closing it. It is not. This book reached you at a particular moment, not the moment you first pressed play or opened the app or heard someone mention the title. Earlier than that. It reached you the moment you stopped needing it the way you once needed things desperately, with both hands, white-knuckled and breathless. Something in you had already begun to open before the first word arrived. That is why the words landed. That is why certain sentences felt less like new information and more like recognition, like remembering something you had known in a different register and simply forgotten to trust. The title was always the whole message. This reaches you the moment you stop needing it. You are holding it now, which means you are already there, already past the needing, already through the door you thought was still locked. You arrived first. Not the building, not the opportunity, not the version of your life that has been waiting with quiet patience in the direction you keep looking. You arrived first. Your readiness preceded the arrival. Divine timing was never late. You were early, reaching for things before your hands had learned to stay open long enough to hold them. That is not failure. That is the specific work of being human. Every person who ever received anything real had to first learn to stop squeezing the possible into the shape of the desperate. You have learned this, not as an idea, as a felt thing. In your chest, in the way you read these last pages with something different than the urgency you carried at the start. Notice that difference. That is not the chapter changing. That is you. The open hand was always yours to choose. You chose it. Now let what was always coming arrive.